Papua New Guinea is probably the most intriguing place on Earth. A world within our world. A land whose people and wildlife have evolved in total isolation from the rest of the planet. Much of this vast country is shrouded with impenetrable forest. Even in the last century, tribes were found here that had never had contact with the outside world. Papua New Guinea is a land composed of more than 850 separate and tiny isolated tribal societies, each with their own distinctive cultures, traditions, and even languages. This isolation continues even today, as no roads link the country. Most peter out not very far from the outskirts of towns. Many places are still almost inaccessible. In addition to the mainland, there are some 600 tropical islands scattered across 3 seas, the Coral, Solomon and Bismarck Seas. Some of these remain classic desert islands. On the inhabited islands, life appears to the visitor to be an idyllic southern seas dream, fringed by luxuriant coral reefs. Offshore, the ocean's rarely fished, vibrant with life, populated by bizarre and unique creatures. It's warm and it's clear. In Pidgin, the common language of the nation, it's known as Klin Wara. So after more than 30 years exploring the planet's seas, it's here that I've come looking for the ultimate undersea experience, whatever that might prove to be. The south coast of New Britain Island. Off this coast lies the Solomon Trench, one of the deepest oceanic chasms. In the shallows close to land, the fish are varied, prolific, and often unusual. In this virgin area, rarely visited and underwater virtually unknown, the sea life has evolved in quite a unique way. Perhaps creatures from the deep ocean trench that over the millions of years have risen to the warmer shallows and colonised them. Ideal territory for a special undersea encounter. It's a world of camouflage. Ghost pipefish perfectly mimic their habitat, Halimeda weed. And this highly specialised and rarely seen crab matches perfectly the same weed on which it grazes. Gardens of soft corals are also worth closer inspection. The closer you look, the more glimpses you can catch of their perfectly camouflaged residence. Crabs that not only match the colour, but even the shape and texture of the host coral. So here, off New Britain Island, I've had my first special encounters, discovering strange and unique small creatures in a remote and unexplored undersea area, close to the deep-sea Solomon Trench. Trading with the occasional visiting ship has been a way of life since the first schooners sailed through these waters. Fresh vegetables and fruits from village gardens are sold or bartered in what can often become a floating stern-of-boat market. It's a family affair. On the seabed among these islands is the most unexpected wartime wreckage from the hard-fought battles of the Coral Sea that raged through this area. These are Japanese miniature two-man tanks, specially designed for jungle warfare. The wooden barge on which they were being carried was sunk in a bombing raid and has long since rotted away. And not too far away lies this float plane. It's a military aircraft, adapted to land and take off from water by the addition of large floats instead of wheels as its undercarriage. Though upside down on the seafloor, it's still totally intact. Since crashing and sinking here over 60 years before, it's lain untouched and forgotten. Could this have been the plane that sank the barges before being shot down itself? Another totally unique underwater experience. Diving on the most unexpected of wartime wreckage. Most rivers flowing into the sea are carrying large amounts of sediment that they've picked up along the way, and so spill murky water out into the ocean. But here, on the south coast of New Britain Island, is a crystal clear river. Rumours tell of the river's source being guarded by evil spirits, and the villagers along its banks keep well clear of the Plas Masalai, the haunted place that lies above the rapids. Amazingly, the source of this shallow clear river is a blue hole deep in the jungle. Its sheer walls plunge 60 metres. And at the bottom are cracks and crevices through which an underground river flows. Water that comes from the high mountains, then flows underground until emerging here. Crystal clear water, Klin Wara, deep in the jungle. What can be a stranger underwater experience than diving many miles from the sea, deep in the jungle, in a clear water sinkhole, plunging sheer to an underground river, a blue hole guarded by ancient spirits. Culture in Papua New Guinea has evolved in isolation from the rest of the world. Brides can still be purchased, and pigs are the favourite dowry in these transactions. The men spend much of their time in the men's house. These are just huts with a fire in the centre, where they gather to smoke and retell ancient stories. Generally, women carry out all the day-to-day work, caring for the animals, cultivating vegetables in the gardens, fetching water and cooking for the household, leaving the men with plenty of time for hunting and for warfare with neighbouring tribes. Although the national government has imposed laws on the people, tribal law is still a powerful force. In some tribes, the most serious crime is not the taking of a life, but adultery, the taking of a wife. A killing can be resolved by compensation payments to the family of the victim, in land or in livestock. But the traditional punishment for adultery would be the cutting off of the woman's nose, so she can't be attractive to men anymore. And the man would be hung from the ceiling of a hut and smoked over a low fire in an ordeal of death by suffocation. Kimby Bay, New Britain Island. Seamounts and shallow reefs are scattered throughout the bay. Some just break surface. Others rise from the seabed to just a few metres below. The shallow waters here are like a tropical marine aquarium, crammed with diverse and colourful fishes. And this concentration of life also attracts the predators. In the crystal clear waters of the bay, the seamounts appear like underwater fairy tale castles. All are festooned with pristine hard and soft corals, and populated by thousands of tiny, vividly coloured reef fish. One survey of the bay identified an astonishing 860 species of fish, and almost 350 different types of stony corals, as well as masses of soft corals, Gorgonian fans and black corals. Fanworms extend gracefully out into the gentle flow of the current, their feathered tentacles capturing tiny creatures from the water, that they then gradually filter down to their mouths. Look closer, and you'll find the smaller concealed residents of the reef. Even today, the reefs are only subsistence fished by the occasional dugout canoe, and so remain pristine, vibrant, and still densely populated with fish. The perfect dream underwater experience. Gorgeous coral reefs and intriguing sea life in an area virtually untouched by humans. This is how all the world's oceans once were. Yet not far from the reefs is a reminder of how destructive man can be. The ultimate airborne killing machine of its time, that's laid lost for almost 60 years. Close to the shore, on the seabed of a muddy inlet, an intact Japanese Zero fighter plane lies on the shallow sea floor. Because in the Second World War, even peaceful Kimby Bay didn't miss out on its share of the action. Chewing beetle nut remains popular throughout the country. The raw nut is eaten with powdered lime and mustard stalks. It has a mild narcotic effect, and for regular users, the side effect of permanently stained mouth and teeth. Another very alive tradition is the funeral feast. The old man who died left instructions that all his pigs be slaughtered for a feast in his memory. The whole village turned out to enthusiastically butcher his herd, before cooking them on a huge outdoor hearth of heated rocks.
Hey! Hello!
This tiny island off the coast of Lorengau, the only town on Manus, proved to be an unexpected surprise. Manus is the remotest of Papua New Guinea's islands. Sitting just 2 degrees south of the equator, on a map it appears to have little connection to the rest of the nation. Its people seem to be more related to the seafaring Polynesians than to the mainland mountain tribes. Known to mariners as the Admiralty Islands, Manus is just the largest of a group of islands, atolls and rocky islets. Perhaps this remotest outpost will provide the encounter we're looking for. As if jellyfish that live upside down aren't strange enough, check this camouflaged crab, smaller than a little fingernail, lurking in the shadow of the jellyfish. Everywhere on the seafloor are examples of that classic symbiotic relationship between fish and crustacean. Blind shrimps, forever excavating the burrows that they share with gobies, the eyes of the partnership. In an area of nothing but soft, fine, silty sand, I chanced upon these strange jelly-like creatures, obviously capturing microscopic particles of food from the water column with their long, whip-like tentacles. I've still never found them in any identification book. Watch the speed with which these fish disappear at the first hint of danger. Moving as one, they disappear into a burrow in the sand in the blink of an eye. There are 24 camera frames per second. When shown frame by frame, most are gone in 2 frames, less than 1/10 of a second, and the slowest are gone in 4. The anemone becomes home for a varied collection of other creatures. Anemone fish never stray far from it. Shrimps pick tiny scraps from its surface. Porcelain crabs reach out into the current from the safety of the anemone to filter particles from the water. But even an anemone must eat. Sea mice rely on their protective spiky bristling hairs and an ability to burrow into the sand to escape predators. But when one accidentally strays into an anemone, it becomes the anemone's latest meal. At normal speed, it took over 2 minutes to wrap itself around the helpless sea mouse. Speeded up, the action's clearer. Seagrass is always an interesting environment, and here's no exception. Cautiously hovering, squid aggregate in the shallow beds where they delicately lay their eggs. Hidden in the safety of the grass, they have the best chance of hatching out a new generation. The rewarding experience of diving in what appears to be the least likely area, and discovering that even here, on a sandy, featureless seafloor, life is surprisingly plentiful, and sometimes bizarre. The people of these islands are traditionally hospitable to strangers. There's an enthusiastic welcome and a display of dancing, accompanied by the beat of the island's drums, which are carved from the logs of whole trees. The Second World War reached even this distant outpost of Papua New Guinea. This is the sunken remains of a huge American supply ship. As the ship has broken up, its cargo has spilt out onto the sea floor. The steel plates of the ship have become encrusted with coral growth. The placid surface of Rabaul's harbour today gives no hint of its violent past. As the main base for Japanese operations in the Pacific, it was a regular target for Allied bombing raids, and many warships and wartime cargo vessels now lie sunk on the seafloor of the harbour. Today, peaceful and calm in their undersea resting places, their decks, corridors and passages are a home to fish. "60 years after the horrors of war ripped through the region, the experience of exploring ships that were sunk during that violent and turbulent episode in history, ships which many would have died defending. Rabaul is the only town in the world to be built inside the crater of an active volcano. In fact, the whole of the bay is the rim of an ancient volcano. Ancient, but not dormant. Eruptions are an everyday occurrence that the people of the town take in their stride, but never take for granted. Because in the early hours of Sunday the 18th of September 1994, a cataclysmic eruption devastated the town. This is where the old town lies, buried, smothered by volcanic ash many meters deep. But like a phoenix rising from the ashes, the town has been born again. The new town's recently rebuilt pier seemed an unlikely location for encounters with the unusual. But it doesn't take long for the creatures of these fertile seas to colonize any new structure. The bare surfaces of the pillars and uprights have already attracted a coating of marine organisms and a huge variety of macro creatures. This shrimp is uniquely evolved for life on the sharp spines of the sea urchin. Wherever you travel around this strange country, there's always something new and different to encounter. The shallow sea floor and beds of seagrass alongside the pier are also a great place for finding other secretive creatures. Fish that look like they could walk, and fish that actually do. And creatures that graze or hunt the seabed in their own particular ways. The fascinating experience of seeing how quickly the creatures of the sea move in and colonize even the newest of man-made structures. Strange creatures don't only live under the water. These mud skippers live on the rocks of Papua New Guinea. Fish that can walk, jump, and spend most of their lives out of the water. Over 100,000 Japanese soldiers were stationed here during World War II. Miles of tunnels honeycomb the hillsides where they sheltered from bombing raids. A whole complex that could hide a whole army. In some of these, barges lie abandoned. "60 years on, the debris of war is still everywhere." During World War II, only Papua New Guinea stood between the Japanese Imperial Army and Australia. Initially, the Japanese army steamrolled from the north to within sight of Port Moresby, before being stopped by the Australian forces. It took a further 3 years to drive them back from the mainland. A bloody and bitter campaign. And reminders of that long, harsh struggle are scattered everywhere throughout the country. Some sunken wreckage needs more effort. A trek through the jungle carrying full dive gear. But it's well worth the walk. The wreckage of a near-intact biplane. It's a Mitsubishi float plane, used as a spotter aircraft during the war, and sunk at its moorings, which is why it's resting upright. Mysterious and magical, powerful and majestic, the Sepik is one of the world's greatest and most fascinating rivers. The largest river of the Pacific, it is to the landmass of Papua what the Congo is to Africa, or the Amazon to South America. Along its banks are the spirit houses, inside which are stored a kaleidoscope of artifacts, carvings, statues and masks. Each with a history and each with a story to tell. Many of them priceless as part of the local mythology. The Sepik is the most linguistically diverse area in the world, with nearly 300 languages spoken along its course. The people of the Sepik are a rich mixture of cultures and ethnic groups. Timeless lifestyles that have evolved to survive the many moods of the river. The river is the region's highway. There are no roads, so the whole life of the region flows along the river. Canoes are still built the same way as they have always been. It's a skill passed down from father to son. With the river regularly overspilling its banks, the people here live in a permanent semi-aquatic state. Even the animals have learned to adapt, to keep their feet dry. The wetlands are rich in wildlife. These aren't birds, but flying mammals. A whole flock of bats disturbed by our arrival. Crocodiles are common, and these two lizards will make a fine meal tonight. But it's the great river itself that's the main provider of protein. Rich enough in fish to feed the villages on its shores. Milne Bay lies on the very eastern tip of the Papuan mainland. The arrival of visiting boat's a real occasion, sending everyone, young and old, paddling their canoes out to meet it, hoping to trade fruit, vegetables, and locally made shell necklaces and jewellery. It's a deep bay, cutting into the end of the landmass, outside of which lie a number of islands and fascinating offshore dive sites. As in so many other regions, coral reefs rise sheer from the ocean floor to within a few metres of the surface, and on their peaks, colourful coral gardens grow. The reef tops are alive with healthy corals and a profusion of fish life. But it's not on the outer reefs that the most intriguing encounters occur. Unique to this region is the practice of storing the skulls of enemies killed in battles with rival tribes. They're usually kept on ledges close to villages, or in caves like this one. A spectacular reminder of the volcanic origins of the islands off this coast, and that they could erupt again at any time, are the hot geysers, blowing off pressured jets of volcanically heated sulphurous steam high into the air. The most ordinary looking of beaches and bays can deliver the most unexpected undersea encounters. The shallow coastal waters here are also full of surprises. The creatures of these seas being some of the planet's weirdest imaginable. This is a Malibu nudibranch, which catches its prey by casting its extendable mouth, hoovering up the creatures caught in its net. And this, believe it or not, is the longest animal in the world, growing as long as 40 metres long, yet it doesn't even have a brain. It's called a siphonophore, a twisting, swirling mass of individual animals, all joined together in one long colony of transparent jellies. Amazingly, they all seem to have specific roles, from those at the head and tail whose job it is to create movement, to the dozens of other body parts which are responsible for eating and reproduction. And just like its more common jellyfish relatives, the siphonophore is equipped with deadly stinging cells which cover its body, providing an excellent defence against would-be predators. a weird and rare giant of the ocean. In one of the strangest regions of this strange land, the totally unexpected experience of encounters not only with one of the ocean's most bizarre beings, but also with the longest creature on the planet. Port Moresby is the first port of entry for almost every visitor to Papua New Guinea. It's a modern city with a busy commercial centre. But there's also another side to this town. For while many make very good livings in the business heart of the capital, others, drawn from the distant corners of the country by the magnet of the big city, don't fare so well. Living in squalor in unserviced squatter settlements and shanty towns. It's a city of extremes. The divide between the haves and have-nots is very clear. It's the last place you'd expect to find Klin Wara. Yet just around this headland lies Bootless Bay, and the ocean here is filled with surprises. Who would ever expect that off a capital city, the sea would be clear and vibrant with life? Yet on coral bommies, fish gather in colourful clouds. Sea snakes are actually air-breathing, but can stay submerged for long periods, searching the holes and crevices of the reef for small fish. And in the place that you would least expect it, the quest for the most amazing ocean encounters seems to be reaching a climax. Because lurking camouflaged among the corals is one of nature's quirkiest oddities. The rhinopius, the lacy scorpionfish, has the most outlandish fringes and tassels to soften its lines as it lurks among the corals, waiting to snatch its prey. There are actually two in shot. There's also a black one in the background. Where again least expected, these seas are full of surprises. Klin Wara just off the capital city, and an encounter with one of the ocean's most bizarre and ornately beautiful fishes. This ship came to a far more peaceful end than most that are found below the seas of Papua New Guinea. Deliberately scuttled in 1986 for sport divers, the 65-metre-long wreck rests perfectly upright. In her former existence, this liquid gas tanker plodded the sea routes of the eastern Pacific with her cargoes. Now an artificial reef, schools of jacks swirl around her bridge, and magnificent corals grow on her. The Witus are a group of islands to the northwest of Kimby Bay. South Sea islands that the 20th century seems to have forgotten and bypassed. And back close to where we started our quest, we discover the ultimate ocean encounter in the clearest of waters. Offshore, coral seamounts that don't quite break the surface act as magnets for the most magnificent giant schools of fish. Washed by current, the reef top is totally crammed with life. 100% healthy and vibrant reef community. But the action really takes place in the clear blue water above the seamounts. Huge schools of jack and barracuda swirl around the mount, in clouds so dense that at times they block out the light. The magnificence of this spectacle that stretches beyond the limit of vision. The almost mystical feeling that the seamount generates. The sensation of the pure power, grandeur, and richness of the planet's oceans. The knowledge that I'm just a tiny, insignificant air-breathing creature, totally out of place in the swirling mass of fish. In this strange, forgotten country, with its outlandishly bizarre sea creatures and people, I found my ultimate ocean encounter.